Hey everyone, today I want to talk about thumbnail sketching. I remember talking about this very briefly in an earlier video where I talked about drawing in small sketchbooks. I'll put the link to that video in the video description below. Thumbnail sketching is a technique for doing quick studies to figure out whether or not your composition will work, whether or not the values will work. The idea is to draw small and fast. You don't have to add a lot of details, and because of that you don't have to spend a lot of time on each sketch. So this allows you to draw a lot of iterations for the subject or the scene that you want. So here, for example, I have two quick sketches. This is sort of like a thumbnail size. This is much bigger. Anyway, these were drawn very quickly to test out the composition for this building. So this was drawn from the side of the building. This was drawn from the front of the building. I wanted to test the composition to see which one works better, which one has more clarity. What I mean by clarity is when a person is looking at your sketch for the first time, is he or she able to identify what you are drawing instantly? Is the shape of your subject clear? Are the light and shadows, the values, are they working well? Do they have good contrast? Thumbnail sketches can help you identify problem areas quickly. So for example, on these two pages, I have several quick sketches. They are not exactly thumbnail sizes because I wanted to draw them bigger because it's a very big scene, a panorama scene that I'm drawing. I wanted to add a bit more details so that it's easier for me to draw. But the idea is the same, to do quick studies, to test out the composition, the light and shadows and the values. So for these two sketches here, I was actually trying to figure out the composition. This is a viaduct and the perspective is quite challenging. So there are a lot of diagonal lines, vanishing points, a lot of elements. So while drawing this, I realized I got some of the perspective lines wrong and the proportion of this tree is wrong, which is why I drew this scene again a second time to correct the perspective. So the vanishing point is actually to the left side of the tree rather than to the right side of the tree. So I managed to identify the problematic areas and I did not make the same mistake again. I was actually trying to figure out the composition. This is a viaduct and the perspective is quite challenging. There are a lot of diagonal lines, vanishing points, and there are many elements. So while drawing this sketch, I realized I got some of the perspective lines wrong and the proportion for some of the elements, they are a bit off as well, which is why I drew the sketch a second time. Focusing on the perspective. So for example here, the vanishing point for these elements here, they are to the right side of this tree. But in actual fact, the vanishing point is actually to the left side. So I was able to identify the problem with this sketch. And that's great because if I were to tackle this scene and draw it on my watercolor paper straight away with pen and ink, I probably would have made the same mistake. So these two quick sketches allowed me to figure out the problematic areas really quickly. And for this sketch below, I was trying to figure out the values and also the composition. This is again not exactly thumbnail size. I had to draw this bigger because it's a pretty large scene. Alright, having said all that, let's try and draw some actual thumbnail sketches. The idea for today's video actually came from this book, Expressive Painting by Joseph Stoddard. So here he talked about thumbnail sketches, and these are the thumbnail sketches he drew with pen and ink. So here he used hatching lines to create the values while I used my gray and black brush pen, which I find it more convenient and faster. If you want to practice along with me, you can check out the tutorial photos that I have provided in the video description below. These are actually photos that I have used for many of the tutorials that you see on my YouTube channel. So let's just draw a few. I'm going to fit 8 thumbnails on this page. So let's start with the aerial view of Ho Chi Minh City. This is a scene with a lot of details because there are so many buildings. And this photo was taken from a very tall building. So the perspective is quite dynamic. So I want to get the perspective, at least get the perspective right. So for elements in the foreground, I'm going to try and draw them with thicker lines. And I need to figure out the sizes of the buildings. I need to make sure that I place them at the correct position and they are drawn at the correct size. So this thumbnail allows me to block out the areas where all those buildings in the foreground, where those buildings are in the foreground. So I don't have to draw a lot of details. I just need to plan those areas where the buildings are. And if the thumbnail doesn't, if this thumbnail doesn't make any sense to you, it doesn't really matter. As long as the thumbnail makes sense to you when you're drawing, that's all it matters, because this thumbnail is for you to test out your composition. I can also use my brush pen to do some quick value studies. I can also use the black to add some details. I think the earlier version without the grays, it looked better. So what this tells me is I probably need to lighten this building. This seems to be a bit dark. And this is the actual sketch of the scene, also drawn with the help of the reference photo. Next we have the Hanoi Opera House. Now this photo was taken in front of the Opera House, so we can see the side of the building as well as the front. So this quick thumbnail sketch allows me to check whether or not I am able to get the perspective right. Once again, I don't have to add a lot of details. There's a line here at the bottom. This line is going to tilt up, and there are many people in front of the Opera House taking photos. And there is a car here. So I'm not sure if I should draw the car. Let me just let me add the car in and see whether or not it looks good. So if it doesn't look good, you can leave it out in the actual sketch. I think it looks alright. And this time around for the Viaduct study, I'm going to add some water to the brush pen to make the gray lighter. I think this works as well. Next we have the Saigon Central Post Office, which is actually a pretty... Next we have the Saigon Central Post Office. The building is actually pretty wide, so instead of drawing in this rectangular box, I'm going to draw it across the two rectangular boxes. It's a sketch, so it doesn't have to look good. It's just for you to test the composition. And I need to make sure that I get the proportion right and the angles right. Now there are some people that are that are quite close to me, so I want to draw those people like really large because they are very close to me. When you have people in the scene and sometimes you draw them big, sometimes you draw them small, it creates a nice variety. So I have this person here which is big. You have to figure out where their eye level is. And for the windows, let's paint using the brush pen again. The trees in front of the post office, they are almost black. So I need to get them to look really dark. And if you realize that your tree trunks are too straight, they look a bit too unnatural, you can correct that when you're drawing your actual sketch. So this is again a great way to test the composition and to let you identify problem areas. Next we have the Notre Dame of Saigon. Alright, I probably should have drawn these rectangles first because now I have a vertical scene. So for this, I need to again test the composition, check the perspective. The diagonal lines, they are quite steep, so I need to make sure I get those angles right. And if I don't get them right now, it's okay. I have to get them right when I'm drawing the actual sketch. And the spiral goes all the way up. Alright, this is much taller than I expected, so when I draw that in the sketchbook, I need to remember to give it more space. I need to be able to fit the, sorry, is this called a spiral? This tall part here. So right now they are off they're outside of the rectangle. So that's one problem area. I did not leave enough space for the top. And for the motorbike riders in front, I need to get their proportion right. I need to figure out where is the eye level. The eye level is, I think, somewhere here. So all the eyes will be at the eye level. Should I include this tree on the left side in the sketch, or should I just leave it? I'm not too sure about that. I think it works. Yeah, I think I should include the tree so that it overlaps the road behind, so that there is some depth for the sketch. So the light is coming from this direction, so I need to paint the shadows on the left side. And the trees in the background, alright, these trees, they will be colored with grays. But for the tree in front, I'll paint the leaves here in gray as well. But for the tree trunk, I will color that in black. And let me draw another branch or another branch here. And there are a lot of motorbike riders, so I may need to add a lot more. This time let's try a sketch with people in it. So when drawing people, I need to make sure that, well, I at least get the body language right. So this is a seller at a market. I need to get the placement of the people right, because people in the background, they are going to be smaller, and people who are standing, they are obviously going to be taller compared to people who are seated down. So this particular scene has a lot of elements in it, so this thumbnail will help me figure out whether or not I should draw those little details. And if I draw those little details, should I color them? How should I color them? Now this gray, it's now much lighter. I added more water to it. I think the composition works. Okay, last box here. Let's draw the tank. So with this particular sketch, I can sort of see that I may have to leave some space for the back of the tank. Tank is in very dull green. I can see some of the trees. The leaves are darker compared to the tree trunks. Sometimes the tree trunks will be darker compared to the leaves. Sometimes it's the other way around. So here it seems like the leaves, they are darker compared to the tree trunks. I'm going to use black to paint the shadow areas. So here and the bottom of the tank, it's really dark, almost black. And for the trees in the background, since the leaves are darker compared to the tree trunks, I can use this black to paint the leaves. And if this doesn't work, you can try another thumbnail sketch. Let's draw another version, this time with the tree trunks really dark, like black. And for the leaves, I'll paint with the grays. So we'll see if this works better compared to this. Both version looks alright. I think I got carried away drawing all these thumbnails. They are so small and you can draw them so quickly. Each thumbnail probably took me less than 5 minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes to draw. And you can really test out the different variations very quickly. If it doesn't work, you can draw another one, or another one, or another one, and find out which one works best for you. You can also do quick color studies with thumbnails as well. Here I'm only using value studies. Thumbnail sketches are not only useful, they are also good exercises to help you warm up and get in the mood. Alright, thanks for watching. If you want to check out other sketching tutorials that I have, just visit my YouTube playlist. Links are in the video description below. See you in the next video. Bye!